قُل لَّوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا تَلَوْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَا أَدْرَاكُم بِهِ فَقَدْ لَبِثْتُ فِيكُمْ عُمُرًا مِّن قَبْلِهِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ.
Tell them, had Allah so willed, I would not have recited the Quran to you, nor would Allah have informed you of it. I have spent a lifetime among you before this. Do you then not use your reason?
1. This is a very strong argument against their accusation that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was himself the author of the Quran but was ascribing it to Allah, and in support of the prophets, peace be upon him, claim that it was being sent down to him by Allah, who was its author. The argument is this: you yourselves have witnessed the 40 years of his life before his appointment to prophethood. He was born in your own city and passed his boyhood, youth and middle age before your very eyes. He lived among you and had all kinds of relations, social, marital, economic, etc. with you, so much so that no aspect of his life was hidden from you. Did you notice anything in his whole life that might show that he could be the author of this book? Do you not use your common sense? The question posed in the Quran implied two things which were well known to everyone in Makkah about the Prophet, peace be upon him. First, during the 40 years of his life before prophethood, he had neither received any education nor training nor sat in any company that should have enabled him to become the author of such a book as was full of unique things that were unknown to the people around him. No one had ever heard from him anything about the problems that had been dealt with in different surahs of the Quran. So much so that not even a relative or close friend of his had ever noticed anything in his talk or in anything about him that might have shown any signs of gradual development towards it before he made his great claim to prophethood when he reached the age of 40. This was a clear proof of the fact that the Quran was not the invention of his own mind and that it must have been sent down to him from outside. For it is impossible for a human being to produce anything like this, all of a sudden and without ever manifesting any signs of its evolution and development in his earlier life. That is why when some intelligent people of Makkah felt the absurdity of this accusation, they began to say that it was some other person who taught these things to him. But this was even more absurd than the first thing because they could not point out specifically a single person in the whole of Arabia, not to say of Makkah, who had the ability of producing such unique things as were contained in the Quran. They also knew that a person of such high caliber could not have remained obscure in some unknown corner for 40 years. The second thing that had distinguished him during those 40 years of his life was his noble character, both from the negative and from the positive aspects. He was never known to have told a single lie or practiced any kind of deceit, forgery, cunning, craftiness and the like in any way whatsoever. On the other hand, all those people with whom he had come into contact in any capacity bore witness to the fact that he had been truthful, honest, and trustworthy without any blemish whatsoever. As an instance, a most well-known historical fact may be cited. Only 5 years before his prophethood, the Kaaba was damaged by rains. When they were rebuilding it, a quarrel arose among the different clans of the Quraysh as to who should have the honor of setting Har-i-Aswad, the black stone, in its proper place. Therefore it was agreed that the one who would be the first to enter into the haram next morning should arbitrate in the quarrel. Next morning the first person who entered the haram was Muhammad, peace be upon him. At this all the people cried out with joy, "He is an absolutely trustworthy man, and we are fully satisfied with him. He is Muhammad, peace be upon him." This is how Allah had made that large gathering of the Quraysh bear witness to the fact that he was the trustworthy, before appointing him as his messenger, peace be upon him. Therefore there was no justification for anyone to accuse the man, who had never told a lie nor ever practiced forgery nor craftiness in his whole life, of ascribing falsely to Allah his own literary creation, and claiming categorically and persistently that it was of divine origin. That is why Allah has asked his messenger, peace be upon him, to refute their absurd charge by saying, as it were, only this. O my people, use your common sense before making this absurd accusation, for I am not a stranger or a foreigner among you. I have lived a lifetime of 40 years among you before making a claim that I have received revelation from Allah. How can you expect from my past that I would present the Quran to you as Allah's book, without gaining knowledge from Him and without His command? See, Surah Al-Qasas, En. 109.
فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا أو كذب بآياته إنه لا يفلح المجرمون.
Who, then, is a greater wrongdoer than he who forges a lie against Allah or rejects His signs as false? Surely, the guilty shall not prosper.
Point 22. That is, if these revelations are not from Allah and I myself compose them and present them as revelations from Him, there can be no greater sinner than I am. On the other hand, if these revelations are truly from Allah and you are falsifying these, then there can be no greater sinner than you. Point 23. Some foolish people draw wrong and misleading conclusions from this verse, by a fallacious reasoning. They confine the meanings of fala to long life or worldly prosperity or worldly success and argue like this. This verse declares categorically that criminals can never attain success. The converse of this proposition, that is, anyone who is successful cannot be a criminal, must also be true. Hence, if a claimant should live a long life after his claim to prophethood or Pr. prosper in the world or his claim receives a good response in the world from the people, he should be acknowledged as a true prophet. For they argue, if he had been a false prophet he could not have prospered, but would have been killed or starved to death or rendered unsuccessful in his mission, as soon as he had claimed to be a prophet. But even a little thinking will show that this argument is fallacious on the face of it. Firstly, the converse of every proposition is not always true. Secondly, the Quran does not use the word fala in this limited sense. Thirdly, Allah deals with the criminals according to His divine law of respite. Now let us consider the matter in detail. The words, indeed, the criminals will not be successful, have not been used, in the context they occur, to prescribe a criterion for judging a true prophet from a false one, so that if a claimant is successful, he should be accepted, and if he is not, he should be rejected. As a matter of fact, these words have been put in the mouth of the messenger to make a declaration like this. I know it for certain that the criminals cannot attain true success. Therefore I cannot commit the crime of making a false claim to prophethood. But as regards you, I am absolutely sure that you cannot attain true success because you are guilty of falsifying me who is a true prophet of Allah. The other thing is that the word fala is not used in the limited sense of worldly success, but it has been used to denote the permanent success which never suffers any loss whatsoever irrespective of the fact whether the claimant gains or does not gain any worldly success in the initial stage. Nay, it is just possible that a false claimant who invites people to misguidance should attain great worldly success and his misguidance might also prosper. This is, however, not success in the terminology of the Quran, but this would be an utter failure. On the other hand, it is also possible that the inviter to the truth should suffer untold afflictions or fall a prey to the persecutions of the transgressors, and leave this world without winning over anyone to the side of the truth. But this will be, in the terminology of the Quran, true success and not a failure. The other thing that refutes the fallacy of these foolish people is that they do not take into consideration the divine law of respite, according to which the mere fact that a false prophet enjoyed a long prosperous life is not a proof that he was a true prophet. The Quran has made it clear at many places that Allah does not expedite the matter of the punishment of the criminals, but gives them respite to mend their ways. Nay, He also lets them loose in their deviation if they abuse that respite and become more corrupt. Sometimes He makes them even more prosperous so that they should fully manifest all the evils they had hidden in their hearts and incur full punishment which they really deserve for their evil deeds. The divine law of respite takes its due course in the case of false prophets as it does in the case of other criminals. And there is no reason why they should be an exception to this. Satan, the greatest of all criminals, has been allowed to practice every kind of deception up to the day of judgment, and there is no mention of any exception to this effect that he will not be allowed to set up a false prophet. As a last resort, such perverse interpreters of the Quran turn to ayats 44 to 47 of Surah Al-Haqqa. If Muhammad had fabricated something himself and ascribed that to us, we would have seized his hand and cut off his heart's vein. But these cannot serve their purpose, for what they imply is only this: if the true prophet appointed by Allah were to ascribe any false thing to Allah, he would be seized forthwith. Therefore it is no more than a fallacy to argue from this to the erroneous conclusion that the impostor who is not seized is a true prophet, for this divine principle applies only to a true prophet and not to an impostor. In order to grasp this point, let us take the instance of the government servants. It is obvious that the rules and regulations which are prescribed for government servants apply only to those who are actually government servants and not to impostors. Those who pretend to be government servants are dealt with according to the criminal code like other criminals and villains and not according to the code of employment. Besides this, the context in which these verses occur clearly shows that these are not laying down any criterion of judging whether a claimant is a true prophet or an impostor. Moreover, a true prophet can easily be distinguished from an impostor by his high character, his noble mission and the unique message he presents. Hence there was no need of setting up such an irrational and unnatural standard of distinguishing a true prophet from an impostor.
وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنفَعُهُمْ وَيَقُولُونَ هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِندَ اللَّهِ قُلْ أَتُنَبِّئُونَ اللَّهَ بِمَا لَا يَعْلَمُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَلَا فِي الْأَرْضِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى عَمَّا يُشْرِكُونَ.
They worship beside Allah those who can neither harm nor profit them, saying, "These are our intercessors with Allah." Tell them, O Muhammad, peace be upon him, do you inform Allah of something regarding whose existence in the heavens or on the earth He has no knowledge? Holy is He and exalted far above what they associate with Him in His divinity.
This is a fine way of saying that no such intercessors exist as can plead their cases with Allah. For if something is not in the knowledge of Allah, it implies that it does not exist at all, for everything that exists anywhere in the heavens and the earth is in His knowledge.
وَمَا كَانَ النَّاسُ إِلَّا أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً فَاخْتَلَفُوا وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةٌ سَبَقَتْ مِنْ رَبِّكَ لَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ فِيمَا فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ.
Once all human beings were but a single community. Then they disagreed and formulated different beliefs and rites. Had it not been that your Lord had already so ordained, a decisive judgment would have been made regarding their disagreements.
25. C. En. 230 of Surah Al-Baqarah, and En. 24 of Surah Al-An'am. 26. The decree that Allah has ordained is that the reality that shall be kept hidden from man's senses in order to test whether he recognizes this by using his common sense, intelligence, conscience and intuition, and if he does not, he shall be allowed to tread the wrong ways he chooses. That is why their differences about the reality are not being resolved by uncovering it today. This thing has been stated here to remove a common misunderstanding about the diversity of religions in the world. At that time, there was a confusion in the minds of the people, and as even today, concerning this. They said, different people profess different religions, and the followers of each religion claim that their religion alone is the true one. How may then a seeker of truth judge which one of these is the true religion? The answer is, in the beginning all mankind had only one religion, and that was the true religion. Then people strayed away from it and invented different religions of their own with different creeds and ways. Now if you desire that Allah Himself should uncover the truth and present it to you to enable you to decide which religion is the true one, you should know that this will not be done in this life, because you are required to decide this by using your common sense and intelligence. This worldly lift is a trial to see whether or not you yourselves recognize the truth by using your common sense and intelligence.
وَيَقُولُونَ لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَّبِّهِ فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ فَانتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُم مِّنَ الْمُنتَظِرِينَ.
They say, why was a sign not sent down upon the Prophet from his Lord? Tell such people, the realm of the unseen belongs to Allah. Wait then, I shall wait along with you.
27. That is, though they demanded a sign as a proof of the fact that he was a true prophet, peace be upon him, and was presenting true revelations, this was not based on a genuine desire for recognizing and accepting the truth but was merely a pretext for rejecting it. For they had no intention of molding their habits, their morality, their social system, in short, reforming every aspect of their life in accordance with the implications of the acceptance of the message of the Prophet, peace be upon him. As they did not intend to believe in it, they would say even after seeing a sign, no sign had been shown to them. Obviously, they would not give up that freedom which they were enjoying in. Following their desires and lusts, by accepting the unseen, the creeds of Tawhid and the hereafter, which would bind them to the absolute moral principles. 28. That is, I have presented before you what Allah has sent down to me. But what He has not sent down to me is unseen, both for me and for you, and it is entirely with Allah to reveal or not to reveal it. Now if you will not believe unless Allah sends down what He has not sent down, you may wait for it. I, too, shall wait and see whether your persistent demand is or is not satisfied.
وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً مِّن بَعْدِ ضَرَّاءَ مَسَّتْهُمْ إِذَا لَهُم مَّكْرٌ فِي آيَاتِنَا قُلِ اللَّهُ أَسْرَعُ مَكْرًا إِنَّ رُسُلَنَا يَكْتُبُونَ مَا تَمْكُرُونَ.
No sooner than we bestow mercy on a people after hardship has hit them, than they begin to scheme against our signs. Tell them, Allah is swifter in scheming. Our angels are recording all your intriguing.
29. They practiced deceptions regarding the sign of the famine that had been inflicted on them. Ayats 11-12. This verse alludes to the same, as if to say, how dare you demand a sign again, whereas recently the sign of the famine has been shown to you? At that time you invoked the help of your deities but in vain, though you had set them up as intercessors with Allah and believed that offerings to their shrines would prove very effective in removing the famine. But you yourselves learned by the first-hand experience that those so-called gods possessed no power at all. Therefore when you were convinced that all power belongs to Allah alone, you turned to Him and began to invoke His help. This experience ought to have convinced you of the truth of the message of Muhammad, peace be upon him, for this was the very fundamental thing which he was teaching. Instead of learning a lesson from this sign, you began to practice deceptions to explain it away, as soon as the famine was over and there had come the blessed rainfall. You invented many explanations, deceptions, concerning the causes of the famine and its subsequent end in order to escape from the doctrine of Tawhid and stick to your shirk. The verse is meant to declare that no sign would convince such people as those who had not benefited from the great sign of the famine. Therefore there was no use of showing any sign to them. 30. Allah is more swift in plotting, means this: if you practice deceptions in order to explain away the sign of the famine so that you might find excuses to evade the implications of its acceptance in order to continue your rebellious attitudes. Allah is more swift in carrying out His plans to outdo your deceptive methods. He will leave you free to move in your wrong ways. He will even bestow upon you the worldly prosperity, which will so delude you that you will forget that you were being closely watched. And you will commit evil deeds with apparent immunity and enjoy yourselves to your heart's content. But His angels will go on keeping a full and complete record of your deeds, which will be presented for your prosecution after your death.